Beneath the fractured moon, where silver light bled into the eternal frost, a single drop of blood froze mid-fall, whispering secrets of unions forged in shadow and fang. The wind howled through the jagged peaks of the Iron Spine Mountains, carrying the scent of pine resin and distant smoke, as if the world itself mourned the queen's unraveling. Ilara, once the unchallenged sovereign of the Crimson Vale, now wandered the borderlands in exile, her velvet cloak tattered by thorns and regret. The vampires of her court had turned against her, their whispers turning to blades in the dead of night. "A queen who weds the enemy is no queen at all," they had hissed, their eyes gleaming with the cold hunger of betrayal. Banished for the alliance she had brokered, a marriage to end the endless war between her shadowed kin and the feral wolf packs, she was left to the mercy of the snow-swept wilds, her throne reduced to a memory etched in ice. Her boots crunched against the crystalline crust, each step a defiance against the numbness creeping into her veins. The cold was a living thing here, seeping through the fur-lined hems of her gown, biting at the pale skin of her throat where her pulse should have thrummed, but now merely echoed like a distant drum. Ilara's hand drifted to the pendant at her neck, a blood-red ruby carved in the shape of a crescent moon, its facets catching the lunar glow like captured starfire. It had been her mother's, a relic from the old pacts, said to bind the fates of predator and prey. Now it felt like a curse, heavy against her chest, warming faintly as if alive with the blood it had drunk in ancient rituals. The war had raged for centuries, vampires and werewolves locked in a dance of slaughter under the same indifferent sky. Ilara's marriage to King Thorn, the alpha of the Silverfang pack, was meant to be the chain that bound their hatreds. A political rite sealed in the neutral halls of the Moonspire Temple, where priests chanted invocations to the goddess of the hunt. She had stood before him, her black hair woven with obsidian beads, her lips stained the color of fresh spilled wine, and pledged her eternity to his. His eyes, storm gray and shadowed by old scars, had met hers with a flicker of something unspoken. Guilt, perhaps, or the weight of his own fractured crown. But the union was no love story. It was a truce carved from necessity, her body offered as collateral to silence the howls of battle. Yet betrayal came swift as a winter gale. Her council, led by the ambitious Lord Vesper, had seen her compromise as weakness. "You dilute our blood with the stench of fur and fang," he had snarled in the throne room, his claws extended like accusations. They stripped her of her guards, her sigils, and cast her out beyond the Vale's enchanted borders, where the magic that sustained her kind thinned to whispers. Now, alone in this frozen limbo, Ilara felt the first true pangs of her exile's toll. The sun she could endure in shadowed crypts, but this relentless chill gnawed at her immortal core, sapping the fire that once made her veins sing with power. She paused at the edge of a ravine, where the wind sculpted the snow into ghostly spires, mimicking the turrets of her lost palace. Below, a frozen river gleamed like a vein of quicksilver, its surface unbroken save for the faint tracks of some nocturnal beast. Ilara's breath misted the air, her crimson eyes scanning the horizon. The moon hung low, bloated and veined with crimson, a blood moon, omen of upheavals yet to come. It illuminated the ruby pendant, casting ruby shadows across her fingers as she clutched it tighter. What strength was this, she wondered, if not the choice to endure when all mercy had fled? Her people revered the night as a cradle of eternity, but here, in the wilds, it felt like a grave. A distant howl pierced the silence, raw and resonant, echoing off the cliffs like a lament. Wolves, she thought, her lip curling in instinctive disdain. Thorn's kin, perhaps, patrolling the fringes of their territory. The marriage had demanded she learn their ways, the lunar cycles that stirred their blood, the pack's unyielding loyalty. But she had resisted, rationalizing it as survival, not surrender. Now that resistance felt like folly. Her hand pressed against her abdomen, where an unfamiliar ache lingered, a secret she dared not name. The union had been consummated in the temple's inner sanctum, under the gaze of the goddess, but she had dismissed the warmth that followed as mere ritual illusion. The howl came again, closer, laced with urgency. Ilara's senses sharpened, the vampire in her awakening to the metallic tang of blood on the breeze, fresh, animal, mingled with something darker. She slipped behind a boulder, her form blending with the shadows. Heart, or what passed for one, pounding in slow, deliberate beats. The snow muffled footsteps, but she heard them, heavy, uneven, dragging through the drifts. A figure emerged from the tree line, silhouetted against the moon's glow. A massive shape, cloaked in furs matted with crimson, limping as if pursued by ghosts. He collapsed to his knees mere paces away, breath ragged, revealing the broad shoulders and wild mane of a werewolf. Not just any. The scent of alpha power clung to him, tempered by pain and the sharp bite of silver, poison to his kind. Thorn? No, this was not her husband, whose form she knew from the marriage rites. This stranger's eyes, when they lifted, burned with feral gold, locking onto her hiding place with unerring instinct. Blood trickled from a gash across his chest, staining the snow in dark petals, and in his fist he clutched a torn banner of the Silver Fang pack. Fear coiled in Ilara's gut, mingling with an unwelcome curiosity. An enemy in the wilds, wounded and alone. Fate's cruel jest, or the first thread of a destiny she could not yet see. The ruby pendant pulsed against her skin, warm now, as if urging her forward into the unknown. The stranger's golden eyes pierced the gloom like twin flames in the frost, pinning Ilara where she crouched behind the boulder. She held her breath, the cold air sharpening into knives in her lungs as the werewolf's ragged inhalations filled the ravine. Blood scented the wind now, thick and coppery, mingling with the earthy musk of his furred form. He was no mere scout. The breadth of his chest, scarred and heaving, spoke of battles etched into bone, and the banner in his grip, torn silver threads embroidered with a snarling wolf's head, whispered of royalty fallen low. Not Thorn, she confirmed with a surge of wary relief, but kin to him, perhaps a brother or lieutenant marked by the same storm-gray lineage. He staggered forward, one massive hand pressing against the gash that wept crimson across his ribs, silver-tipped barbs embedded like cruel stars in his flesh. Poison, she knew instinctively, the vampire's favored torment, designed to burn through shifter blood until madness claimed them. His lips peeled back in a silent snarl, revealing fangs elongated by pain. But there was no aggression in his gaze as it swept over her shadow. Only desperation, raw and unfiltered, like a beast cornered by the hunt it could no longer outrun. Ilara's fingers tightened around the ruby pendant, its warmth a stark contrast to the ice seeping through her gloves. It pulsed faintly, as if syncing with the erratic thrum of his heart, audible even from her hiding place. Why did it stir now, this relic of old pacts? Her mind raced, rationalizing the pull. Curiosity, nothing more. A vampire queen did not aid the enemy, even one bleeding out in the snow. Yet fear coiled tighter, not of him, but of the isolation that had already stripped her bare. To ignore him was to embrace the void. To approach was to invite chaos into her fragile exile. The wind shifted, carrying his scent fully to her. Pine and iron, laced with the faint, wild tang of the pack's lunar rites. It stirred something primal in her veins, a whisper of the marriage bed she had endured, where Thorn's touch had been duty-cloaked in formality. This stranger's essence was fiercer, untamed, evoking the howls that had haunted her dreams since the temple. She rose slowly, her cloak whispering against the snow, and stepped into the moonlight. "Stay back," she commanded, her voice a silken thread edged with frost, though her crimson eyes betrayed the tremor within. He froze, muscles rippling under his bloodied furs, but made no move to lunge. Instead, his head tilted, nostrils flaring as he inhaled her scent, night-blooming jasmine and the subtle undercurrent of eternity that marked her kind. Recognition flickered in those golden depths, mingled with shock. "Vampire," he rasped, the word a gravelly accusation, yet his body sagged, knees buckling fully into the drift. The banner slipped from his fingers, fluttering like a dying moth before the wind claimed it. Alara hesitated, the distance between them a chasm of old hatreds. The moon watched impassively, its blood-veined face illuminating the ruby at her throat, which now glowed with an inner fire, casting erratic shadows on his face. Instinct urged her to flee, to let the wilds claim him as they would her, but curiosity rooted her feet. What pursuit had driven an alpha to this brink? And why did his pain echo her own, a mirror of betrayal's sting? She closed the gap in measured steps, the snow yielding softly under her weight, each crunch a heartbeat in the silence. Up close, he was a ruin of power, dark hair matted with sweat and frost, jaw clenched against the silver's burn, which etched faint veins of black across his skin. His eyes, though, held her, fierce, unyielding, searching her face as if she were a riddle carved in ice. "Who hunts you?" she murmured, kneeling at arm's length, her gloved hand hovering near the barbs without touching. The air between them crackled, charged with the forbidden spark of predator meeting predator. "Rivals!" he growled, voice laced with agony. "Within the pack, thorns packed. It weakens us. They see betrayal in every shadow." His gaze dropped to her pendant, widening slightly. "That mark, you're the queen, the bride." The words struck like a blade, twisting the ache in her abdomen, a secret warmth she had buried deep, fearing its impossible truth. Pregnant with a wolf's child, conceived in ritual union, a scandal that would shatter both realms if known. She snatched her hand back, denial surging. "I am no one's bride now. Exile claims me as surely as poison claims you." Yet even as she spoke, the connection hummed, instinctive and unwelcome, born of shared ruin. His pain called to hers, a thread pulling taut in the night. He reached out, not in threat, but with a trembling hand that brushed the edge of her cloak, the touch sending a jolt through her like lightning over frozen earth. Fear warred with the pull, her rational mind screaming of traps and treachery, while curiosity bloomed, fragile as a rose in snow. In his eyes, she saw not the monster of legends, but a king unmade, guilt shadowing his features like the moon's eclipse. What was this bond, forged in blood and frost? She could leave him to the encroaching dark, preserve her solitude, or step closer into the storm of fates entwined. The ruby pendant burned hotter against her skin, a silent witness to the choice unfolding. Distant howls echoed once more, pursuers perhaps, or the wild's indifferent chorus. Alara's breath mingled with his, warm against the cold, as the first fragile bridge of empathy spanned the abyss between them. And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from, and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel, and at what moments of the night they find you. The snow-laden pines whispered secrets as Alara dragged the stranger deeper into the ravine's shadowed embrace, his weight a burdensome anchor against her lithe frame. The ruby pendant swung like a pendulum between them, its crimson glow pulsing in rhythm with his labored breaths, casting erratic flickers on the frost-kissed bark. She had chosen, against every instinct honed by centuries of nocturnal intrigue, to pull him from the open drift, where the howls of his pursuers grew ever nearer, a chorus of betrayal echoing her own. The cold clawed at her skin, unfamiliar and insistent, but the warmth of his bloodied form seeped through her gloves, a forbidden fire that stirred the ache in her womb. They stumbled into a shallow cave mouth, concealed by overhanging icicles that wept frozen tears into the earth. Ilara eased him down against the rough stone wall, the air inside thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient moss, laced now with the metallic tang of his wounds. His golden eyes, dimmed by pain, followed her every move, unblinking, as if she were both salvation and snare. "Why?" he murmured, voice a gravel scrape against the silence, his massive hand clutching the silver barbs embedded in his chest. Black veins spiderwebbed from the punctures, the poison's cruel artistry turning his skin to shadowed marble. She knelt before him, ripping a strip from her tattered cloak to bind the gash, her fingers trembling not from the chill, but from the proximity of this wolf-born enigma. The pendant hovered inches from his face, its light bathing his features in ruby hues, illuminating the deep scar that bisected his brow, a mark of old pack wars, perhaps, or the guilt that shadowed his gaze like perpetual dusk. "Because the wilds devour the lone," she replied, her tone laced with the frost of self-preservation, though her crimson eyes betrayed the curiosity that had rooted her. Rationalizing it still, she told herself, enemies united against greater foes made uneasy allies, nothing more. Yet the pull was visceral, a thread woven from shared exile, tugging at the secret she harbored, the life stirring within her, conceived in the cold rite of marriage, a bridge between bloodlines she dared not cross alone. Outside, the wind rose to a banshee wail, carrying the snap of branches under heavy paws. His pursuers, rival wolves from the silver-fang fringes, emboldened by thorns packed, had scented him, their howls fracturing the night like shattered ice. Ilara's senses sharpened, the vampire in her attuned to the rhythm of heartbeats approaching. 3. No 4, their fury a drumbeat against the snow. She pressed a hand to his shoulder, feeling the tremor of his muscles, coiled yet spent. "They come for you," she whispered, her breath mingling with his in the confined space, warm and intimate against the cave's chill. "And if they find me with you, for me as well." He nodded faintly, pain etching deeper lines into his face, but a spark of resolve ignited in those golden depths. "Draven," he rasped, offering his name like a reluctant vow. "Thorn's shadow, the pact. It fractures us. They call it dilution, weakness." His gaze drifted to her abdomen, unbidden, as if the pendant's glow had revealed more than flesh. Ilara stiffened, a flush of denial heating her pale cheeks, but he did not press, only extended a claw-tipped hand toward the cave's mouth. Together, then, for the night. The first shadow breached the tree line, a hulking form with fur dusted white, eyes gleaming amber in the moonlight. Ilara rose fluidly, her body a silhouette of lethal grace, drawing the slender dagger from her boot, a relic of her court, its blade etched with lunar runes that hummed faintly against her palm. Draven shifted beside her, suppressing a growl as he forced himself upright, his free hand summoning the partial change, fangs lengthening, claws extending, though the silver sapped his strength like a leeching fog. The enemy paused at the ravine's edge, sniffing the air. Their leader, a scarred beta with a pelt marred by old burns, lifting his muzzle to the blood moon. Ilara's heart, stilled for so long, quickened in phantom beats, the pendant burning like a brand against her throat. She stepped forward, blocking the cave's entrance, her voice a silken command laced with venom. "Turn back, curse. The Queen's shadow falls here, and it claims what it touches." The words were bluff and truth entwined. Her exile had stripped her title, but the authority lingered, a echo of eternity. The beta snarled, lunging down the slope with his pack in tow, snow exploding in crystalline bursts. Draven met the first assault, his weakened form a blur of fury, claws raking fur from flesh in a spray of red that steamed on the frost. Ilara danced through the fray, her dagger flashing silver under the moon, slicing tendons and drawing hisses of pain from throats that healed too swiftly. One wolf circled her, jaws snapping, but she vaulted onto its back, driving the blade into its flank with a precision born of shadowed halls. Blood welled hot and slick, mingling with the snow, and the ruby pendant drank it in, its glow flaring brighter, as if the goddess herself approved this unholy pact. Draven staggered under the beta's weight, the silver barbs grinding deeper, but Alara was there, instinct guiding her hand to wrench the leader free, her strength surging from the adrenaline of survival. They tumbled into the drift together, a tangle of limbs and snarls, until Draven's final swipe felled the beast, its body crumpling with a gurgling whine. The remaining wolves fled into the night, their howls retreating like defeated echoes, leaving only the wind's mournful sigh. Panting, Alara helped Draven back into the cave floor now a canvas of crimson petals frozen in place. She extracted the barbs with careful precision, each pull eliciting a shudder from him, his golden eyes locked on hers, gratitude warring with the guilt that etched his soul. "You fight like one born to the moon," he murmured, his hand covering hers as she bound the wounds, the touch lingering, electric. Empathy bloomed in that contact, fragile as thawing ice, his pain mirroring her betrayal, his loyalty to a fracturing pack echoing her lost court. The secret in her belly stirred faintly, a warmth that bridged their worlds, unspoken yet undeniable. As the blood moon waned, casting the cave in softer silvers, Alara leaned against the wall beside him, the pendant cooling between them like a shared talisman. What was mercy, if not this, sheltering the enemy who saw her not as monster, but as mirror? The bond deepened, not in passion's rush, but in the quiet forge of necessity, where fear yielded to trust. Yet doubt lingered. Could a vampire queen and a wolf's shadow endure the dawn? Or would their refuge become the grave of fragile hopes? The wind outside hushed, as if the night itself pondered the cost of redemption. The cave's dim hush wrapped around them like a shroud, the blood moon's fading light filtering through the icicle-veiled entrance in fractured silver shafts. Alara sat cross-legged on the stone floor, her back against the wall, the ruby pendant resting heavy between her breasts, its glow now a subdued ember, as if sated by the night's violence. Draven lay beside her, his breathing steadier, the black veins from the silver poison receding like shadows at dawn. The air hummed with the residue of their battle, dried blood flaking from wounds, the faint metallic tang mingling with the cave's earthy dampness. Outside, the wind had stilled, leaving only the occasional drip of melting ice, a rhythmic pulse echoing the secret thrum in her abdomen. She watched him through half-lidded eyes, her crimson gaze tracing the rise and fall of his chest, the scars that mapped his skin like ancient runes. Guilt shadowed his features, even in repose, a king's burden etched deep, loyalty to thorns packed, warring with the pack's fracturing rage. Alara's fingers absently stroked the pendant, its warmth a constant companion, stirring memories of the Moonspire temple where her fate had been sealed. The marriage rite had demanded more than vows. It had invoked the old blood magic, binding vampire essence to wolf spirit under the goddess's gaze. She had felt it then, a fleeting spark in her veins, dismissed as ritual haze. But now, in this frozen sanctuary, it lingered, a whisper of something awakening. Draven stirred, his golden eyes opening to meet hers, fierce, yet softened by the vulnerability of survival. "The poison fades," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the stone. "Your hands, they carry more than skill." He shifted closer, the furs of his cloak brushing her knee, sending an unwelcome shiver through her core. Not cold, but the electric pull of their proximity. The cave felt smaller, the air thicker, charged with unspoken questions. Alara averted her gaze, rationalizing the bond as mere adrenaline's echo, a temporary alliance forged in blood. Yet the pendant pulsed, syncing with her quickening pulse, as if urging her to confront the truth she had buried. A low groan escaped him as he sat up, wincing at the pull of fresh bandages. His hand reached out, hesitating before cupping the pendant gently, his touch rough yet reverent. The ruby flared under his palm, bathing their faces in crimson light, and Alara gasped as a vision seized her, a torrent of images flooding her mind like moonlight spilling over a frozen lake. She saw the Iron Spine mountains aflame, vampire spires crumbling under wolf howls, thorns crown shattered at the paws of betrayers. But amid the ruin, a child, silver-haired, eyes of mingled crimson and gold, standing between the warring kin, its cry weaving peace from chaos. The pendant burned hotter, drawing forth her hidden gift, the Pathfinder's sight, a rare oracle bloodline dormant in vampire queens, awakened now by the Union's forbidden fruit. Alara wrenched away, the vision shattering into echoes, leaving her breathless, her hand pressed to her mouth to stifle a cry. The ache in her womb sharpened, no longer illusion, but affirmation. Pregnant, impossibly, with Thorn's heir, yet twisted by the right into something prophetic. Draven's eyes widened, his grip lingering on the air where the pendant had been, realization dawning like a storm breaking. The light. It spoke, he whispered, awe threading his gravelly tone. You're no mere exile. The goddess marked you, the key to the pack's true binding. He leaned forward, his scent enveloping her. Wild earth and lingering blood, stirring the empathy that had taken root in their refuge. Guilt flickered in his gaze, deeper now, as if her revelation mirrored his own fractures, the shadow to Thorn's throne, haunted by failures he could not name. She shook her head, denial surging like ice in her veins. It's a curse, not a gift. This child, it dooms us all. The words tasted of ash, her voice cracking with the weight of centuries' isolation. The cave walls seemed to close in, the drip of ice amplifying her turmoil, each drop a reminder of time's inexorable flow. How could she, rejected queen, bear the bridge between eternal foes? The pendant cooled against her skin, but its memory lingered, the vision's clarity etching into her soul, the child's cry as the salve to war's wounds, her role as the vessel. Draven's hand found hers, calloused fingers intertwining with her gloved ones, the contact grounding yet igniting. Every wound carries purpose, he said softly, his melancholic eyes holding hers. Thorn's guilt binds him to duty as mine does to shadow, but you see the path where we falter. The intimacy of the moment pierced her, fear yielding to a fragile acceptance. Outside, a lone howl rose. Not pursuit, but a call from the wild, resonant with the moon's waning pull. Alara felt the gift stir again, softer now, revealing fragments. Draven's past, a betrayal in the pack's heart, his exile self-imposed to protect the pact. He was no rival, but guardian, his melancholy a shield for the king's vision. The ruby pendant glowed faintly, linking their fates, its crescent shape a symbol of the half-moon unions that could heal or destroy. She squeezed his hand, the bond deepening, not in passion's fire, but in the quiet revelation of shared destiny. What was strength, if not embracing the oracle within, choosing to guide rather than flee? Yet doubt clawed at the edges, the vision's promise laced with peril. The child within her kicked faintly, a secret heartbeat against the stone, affirming her as the key. Draven's gaze softened, seeing not the vampire queen, but the redeemer born of rejection. In that shared silence, under the cave's shadowed vault, the first threads of true connection wove tight, instinct acknowledged, rationalized no longer. The blood moon dipped below the peaks, heralding dawn's approach, but within, a spiritual fire kindled, illuminating the path ahead. Alara leaned into his warmth, the pendant a bridge between them, as the weight of destiny settled like fresh snow, heavy, inevitable, transformative. Subscribe, if you believe mercy can crown even the fallen. The first pale fingers of dawn clawed over the iron-spine peaks, staining the snow in hues of reluctant rose, as if the sun itself recoiled from illuminating the fractures below. Alara stirred in the cave's chill embrace, her body pressed against Draven's unyielding warmth, the ruby pendant nestled between them like a dormant heart. Sleep had come in fitful shards, haunted by visions that bled into reality, the child's cry echoing through ruined halls, binding vampire silk to wolf fur in threads of impossible peace. She pulled away slowly, the stone floor grinding against her skin, and met his golden gaze, awake, watchful, shadowed by the guilt that clung to him like frost on fur. "We cannot hide forever," she whispered, her voice a silken thread unraveling in the dim light. The pendant stirred against her chest, its crescent facets catching the intruding dawn, warming as if sensing the storm gathering beyond the cave. Draven nodded, his scarred hand lingering on her arm, the touch a tether forged in the night's revelations. His melancholy deepened the lines around his eyes, a king's echo burdened by shadows he could not outrun. "The pack comes," he said, low and resonant, the words carrying the weight of inevitability. "Thorn's rivals, led by Kale, the beta who whispers poison into eager ears. They seek to shatter the pact, to claim the throne in blood." Alara rose, her cloak mended with hasty stitches from the cave's meager offerings, the fabric whispering against her legs like forgotten oaths. The secret within her quickened, a faint flutter against her palm as she pressed it to her abdomen, a reminder of the life that made her both vessel and vulnerability. Pregnant with Thorn's child, the right's forbidden fruit, she was no longer just exiled queen, but oracle, the pathfinder whose sight could mend or doom the fragile truce. Fear coiled in her gut, rationalized as caution. To face the pack was to confront her own betrayal, the court's hisses mirroring the wolves' snarls. Yet the pendant pulsed, urging her forward, its ruby glow a beacon in the gathering gloom. They emerged into the ravine as the sun crested fully, blinding and merciless, its light a rare torment to her vampire senses. Draven moved with renewed strength, the silver's poison purged by her careful ministrations, though his limp betrayed the deeper wounds of duty and doubt. The air hummed with tension, the wind carrying the distant thunder of paws on snow, Kale's faction, a dozen strong, their howls fracturing the morning like shattered crystal. Alara's crimson eyes scanned the tree line, where shadows coalesced into forms. Massive wolves with pelts of iron gray and midnight black, eyes burning with feral accusation. At their fore strode Kale, shifted to half-man, his frame twisted by ambition, scars from old skirmishes twisting his muzzle into a perpetual sneer. "Traitor's shadow," Kyle growled, his voice a guttural rumble that echoed off the cliffs, halting his pack at the ravine's edge. Snow sifted from branches above, dusting the scene in white veils, as if the mountains wept for the confrontation unfolding. Draven stepped forward, his broad shoulders squared, the banner's remnants tucked into his belt like a defiant talisman. Guilt flickered in his eyes. For the pack's division, for Thorn's burdened crown, for the choices that had led him to this brink. The pact endures. Kale, Thorn's will binds us, as the goddess wills. Kale's laugh was a bark, sharp and devoid of mirth, his gaze sliding to Alara with predatory gleam. "And this bloodsucker, the queen who dilutes our line, her kind slaughtered our sires under the same moon you now defend." His pack shifted restlessly, low growls rising like a brewing gale, the scent of their aggression thick, musk and rage, mingling with the metallic edge of drawn claws. Alara felt the pendant burn hotter, its light flaring beneath her gown, drawing all eyes to the crimson moon at her throat. The vision stirred again, unbidden. Kale's betrayal, a dagger in the dark aimed at Thorn's heart, the child's cry halting the blade mid-strike. She stepped beside Draven, her presence a silken defiance amid the furred fury, the wind whipping her black hair like raven wings. "The pact was forged in the temple's fire," she said, her tone steady, laced with the oracle's quiet authority. "Not for weakness, but for survival. I bear its fruit, a child of mingled blood, the key to ending this endless war." The words hung in the frosted air, a confession that silenced the growls. Shock rippling through the pack like wind over water. Kale's eyes narrowed, fury twisting to calculation, his claws extending as he circled closer, the snow crunching under his weight. "Lies from a fanged whore," he snarled, lunging with blinding speed, but Draven intercepted, their bodies colliding in a whirlwind of claw and fang. Blood sprayed, hot and steaming, staining the white drifts red, petals of conflict blooming under the indifferent sun. Ilara dodged a flanking wolf, her dagger flashing, slicing a gash that healed even as it wept. The pendant guided her, visions flashing, the rival's heart, poisoned by envy, the pack's fracture a wound she could heal or widen. Pain lanced her side as a paw raked her cloak, tearing fabric and flesh. But she pressed on, her blood mingling with Draven's in the snow, a symbolic union of their worlds. Draven pinned Kale against a boulder, his golden eyes blazing with restrained fury, breath heaving in ragged bursts. "Enough!" he roared, the alpha command vibrating through the ravine, forcing the pack to heel. Kyle struggled, spitting defiance, but Draven's grip held, guilt etching his face as he spared the killing blow. "Thorn's guilt mirrors yours, duty over bloodlust. Choose now, war that devours us, or the path of mercy that redeems." Ilara approached, the pendant glowing fiercely, her hand extended not in threat, but offering. The vision peaked, forgiveness as the forge, the child's light illuminating Kale's shadowed soul, turning rival to guardian. "Power is not in the throne's claw, but in the choice to sheath it," she murmured, her crimson eyes locking with his, empathy bridging the abyss. Kale's snarl faltered, the pack's howls fading to uneasy whines, the wind carrying the scent of thawing tension. He wrenched free, staggering back, his gaze torn between hate and the oracle's truth. The child. If true, it changes nothing. The pact falls. But doubt lingered in his voice, a crack in the armor of ambition. Draven released him, stepping away, his own choice made, loyalty to the greater vision, even at the cost of bloodkin. The pack retreated slowly, Kale's form melting into the tree line, leaving the ravine scarred with crimson tracks, the sun climbing higher as if to burn away the night's illusions. Ilara sank to her knees in the bloodied snow, the pendant cooling against her skin, its light dimming like a spent ember. Draven knelt beside her, his hand on her shoulder, the touch heavy with unspoken vows. The confrontation had unearthed the past's ghosts, betrayals from court and pack, rivals hungry for thrones built on ruin. Yet in sparing Kyle, they had chosen mercy over vengeance, love's fragile seed over freedom's solitary flight. Was this redemption, or merely delay? The child stirred within, a heartbeat against the cold, affirming the moral precipice, forgiveness as the true crown, or war's devouring flame. The mountains loomed silent, witnesses to the dilemma etching deeper into their souls as the wind whispered of trials yet to come. The sun hung high over the iron-spine peaks, its relentless glare melting the bloodied snow into sluggish rivulets that traced crimson paths down the ravine as if the earth itself wept for the fragile peace won in fang and claw. Ilara leaned into Draven's steadying grasp, her body a vessel of aches both old and new, the gash at her side seeping warmth through her torn cloak, the child within fluttering like a captured storm against her ribs. The ruby pendant lay cool now against her skin, its crescent facets dulled by the day's indifferent light, yet it hummed faintly, a spiritual echo of the visions that had bound her fate to this unraveling world. Guilt and resolve warred in her crimson eyes, mirroring the melancholy that etched Draven's face. His golden gaze fixed on the retreating shadows of Kale's pack, the wind carrying their fading whines like echoes of unresolved fury. "We return to the heart," Draven murmured, his voice a low rumble against the hush, helping her to her feet with a gentleness that belied his warrior's frame. The touch lingered, his calloused palm on her elbow, a bridge of quiet strength, born from the cave's intimacies and the battle's forge. Thorn's stronghold lay beyond the next ridge, the Silverfang Citadel, a fortress of ancient stone and howling winds, where the Alpha King brooded under the weight of his crown. Ilara nodded, the choice crystallizing in her core, not flight into solitary exile, but confrontation with the past's thorns. The pregnancy, once a buried shame, now pulsed as destiny's demand, a union of bloodlines that could heal the war's ancient wounds or ignite them anew. What was sacrifice, if not offering her rejected sovereignty for the child's unscarred dawn? The pendant warmed slightly, as if the goddess approved, its ruby heart sinking with the quickening life she carried. They traversed the snow-mantled slopes under the climbing sun, the air thick with the scent of pine sap and thawing earth, each step a measured defiance against the cold that still gnawed at her vampire essence. Draven's limp had eased, but his silence spoke volumes, guilt for the pack's fractures, for the shadows he cast at Thorn's side, a dutiful phantom haunted by choices that spared lives yet sowed doubt. Ilara's hand drifted to her abdomen, feeling the subtle kicks, visions flickering at the edges of her sight. Thorn's storm-gray eyes softening at the revelation, the Citadel's halls filled not with howls of war but murmurs of tentative accord. Yet fear coiled deeper, rationalized as wisdom. The court's betrayal lingered like venom in her veins, whispering that mercy was but a prettier cage. The citadel emerged from the mist as dusk bled into the sky, its towers jagged silhouettes against the rising moon, torches flaring like distant stars along the battlements. Guards, massive wolves in half-shift, eyes gleaming amber, flanked the gates, their growls softening to wary snarls at Draven's approach. "The shadow returns," one rumbled, nostrils flaring at Ilara's scent, a mix of night jasmine and spilled blood that marked her as other. She held her head high, the pendant catching the torchlight in crimson sparks, its glow a silent proclamation. Draven's hand found hers briefly, squeezing with unspoken vow before they were ushered into the great hall where firelight danced on walls hung with pelts and ancient banners, the air heavy with the musk of gathered pack and the crackle of hearth flames. Thorn awaited on the dais, his form a colossus of fur-trimmed leather, scars mapping his broad chest like a chronicle of endless skirmishes. His eyes, gray as gathering thunder, locked on Ilara first, widening with a flicker of shock and something deeper, longing, perhaps, cloaked in the king's unyielding duty. "The bride returns," he said, voice resonant as a distant howl, descending the steps with measured grace. The hall hushed, wolves and their mates circling closer, the fire's warmth a stark contrast to the chill seeping from Ilara's bones. Draven bowed his head, guilt shadowing his features like an eclipse. "She bears your truth, my king, the right's gift, and the path to mend what fractures." Ilara stepped forward, the pendant burning now like captured moonlight, her hand pressing to her womb as the vision surged full force. The child, silver-haired and fierce, standing amid vampire envoys and wolf elders, its cry weaving silken threads of peace. "The marriage was no mere chain," she declared, her tone steady, laced with the oracle's quiet fire, crimson eyes meeting Thorn's without flinching. "It birthed redemption. I carry your heir, a bridge of blood and fang, conceived under the goddess's gaze." Gasps rippled through the hall, the fire popping like startled breaths, shadows lengthening as the moon climbed higher, bathing the scene in silver veils. Thorn's face crumpled, guilt etching deeper furrows. For the pack's burdens, for the cold rite that had bound them without warmth, for the war he had chained at the cost of her exile. He reached out, hesitating, his massive hand hovering near her cheek, the air between them crackling with unspoken regrets. "I sent no blade to your court," he whispered, voice breaking like ice under paw. "But my shadow fell long before. The vampire's turn. It mirrors my pack's unrest. This child, does it doom or save?" Draven stood sentinel at her side, his presence a quiet anchor. The bond among them no longer resisted but accepted, a triad forged in trial, where love emerged not as reward, but as the hard-won proof of endurance. The hall's tension peaked, a beta's growl rising from the fringes, echoes of Kyle's descent, but Ilara's gift flared, the pendant blazing crimson, projecting the vision into the collective gaze. Flames of war quenched by the child's light, vampires kneeling beside wolves under a unified moon. "Choose," she urged, her voice a silken command amid the fire's roar, empathy bridging the chasm. "Power devours, compassion crowns. Sacrifice the old hatreds, or let them claim the future." Thorn's hand finally cupped her face, rough thumb tracing her jaw, the touch igniting a warmth that chased the cold from her veins. Tears, rare for immortals, glistened in his eyes, his choice made in that visceral press, union over isolation, healing the wounds of rejection with the forge of forgiveness. Draven knelt then, pledging his shadow's loyalty anew, the pack's howls shifting from challenge to affirmation. A chorus under the moon's watchful eye. Ilara felt the child settle, as if sensing the rebirth, the war's end not in blades, but in this circle of mingled blood where her exile bloomed into sovereignty of spirit. The pendant cooled to a gentle pulse, its ruby heart content, as Thorn drew her into his embrace, Draven rising to flank them, the fire's glow enveloping all in golden light. Pain had yielded to purpose, the romantic tragedy alchemized into epic renewal. Love as the ultimate redemption, proving that every rejected queen could heal a fractured king's soul. Outside, the wind sighed through the peaks, carrying weavos of distant wilds, but within the citadel, silence reigned, a spiritual hush, broken only by the steady beat of hearts entwined. Ilara closed her eyes, the moon's light filtering through arrow slits like a benediction, the scent of smoke and fur a testament to the Renascimento forged in blood and frost. Destiny had revealed itself not as chain, but as wings, freedom in the choice to bind, compassion's quiet power over war's roar. In that union, the child would thrive, a beacon against the night, and the realms, once sundered, would heal under the goddess's gaze. If your heart beat alongside ours, like, comment, and subscribe, because every soul that joins our moon keeps the flame of redemption alive.